Chapter 10. How Can I Help You Heal? The house never knew what hit it. Armed with various cleaning supplies, Sophie moved from room to room with a determined purpose. She wiped down windows until they sparkled, waxed floors until they shone, and scrubbed walls until they were spotless. Ryan watched from a distance, half amused, half concerned. While Sophie's love of organization and cleanliness was known, this level of intensity was unusual. She had tried to offer assistance, reaching for a rag or a broom, but was gently shooed away. As she made her way to the garage, Ryan followed, curiosity getting the better of her. She found her wife meticulously detailing her Jeep, while Sophie's Audi truck sat nearby, spotless. Ryan grabbed a couple of beers from the fridge and approached, holding one out. "Hey, babe, why don't you take a break?" Surprise dawned on Sophie's face for a moment before she took the drink offered and smiled gratefully. They settled against the Jeep and sipped their drinks in comfortable silence, side by side. After a minute, Ryan moved to stand in front of her, gently trapping her against the car. She took the beer from Sophie's hand, placed it on the hood, spread her legs with her foot, and wrapped her arms around her wife. Sophie sank into the hug, exhaling a deep breath she didn't even know she was holding. It was quiet, broken only by the distant chirping of birds and the soft humming of the neighborhood. Finally, she spoke in a voice just a notch above a whisper. "Today is my mom's birthday. I sent a text, called, and left a voicemail, but still nothing." Ryan pulled back slightly, cradling her wife's face in her hands. Her eyes searched for the pain and disappointment there. She yearned to understand the emotions swirling beneath Sophie's composed exterior, to be the rock she could lean on in her time of need. "Do you want to drive by her house?" "No, I know she's good. Jordan told me she went to brunch with some church friends." Ryan's thumbs moved softly across Sophie's cheeks as she nodded in response. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," Sophie shrugged, her eyes dropping to the pavement. "I know I can just stop trying, but that's not me, you know." "I know." Ryan stepped back into her arms and held her tight. "Let me know what you need from me." "This helps, thank you, baby," Sophie whispered. Burying her face in the curve of Ryan's neck, her wife's presence was enough to be a balm to her bruised heart. She soon got handsy, her fingers roaming over her back, brushing against the dark lines of the ink tattoo nestled just below the right armpit. The ink was old, the edges slightly blurred from years of wear, but it never failed to catch Sophie's eye. "You know, I think this might be my favorite tattoo of yours." "Yeah? Why's that?" "I don't know. There's just something about it. The placement, the design, the way it moves when you do." She punctuated her words with a soft kiss to the ink, drawing a low croon of approval from Ryan. "Plus, it reminds me of that night about a month ago. Remember? When we snuck into the museum after hours?" "How could I forget? You were so nervous. You nearly knocked over that painting." "Hey, I was distracted. You were doing that thing with your tongue." "Oh, you mean this thing?" Ryan leaned in and traced the shell with the tip of her tongue, basically licking her name in cursive. Gripping Ryan's waist, Sophie traced her fingers up her flat stomach before finding a home on her left breast. "Ever thought about testing the space in the back of your Jeep?" "Okay. Easy there, Tiger." Nipping at her earlobe, Ryan pulled back with a smirk. "As much as I'd love to continue this, I know cleaning calms you, so I'm going to leave you be. But don't be too long, okay? Real Housewives comes on in a few hours, and I want you fed and showered beforehand." "Yes, wife." Part of Sophie loved being told what to do by Ryan, and when the short munchkin got all bossy like that, it was kind of a turn-on. When Ryan turned to leave, she delivered a playful slap to her ass, drawing out a yelp of surprise. Rubbing her backside, Ryan frowned, yet a smile still toed from her lips revealed her true feelings. She loved that shit. With a flirty wink and an air kiss, she strutted back into the house, putting a little extra sauce in her hips, knowing that Sophie was watching. Biting her lip, Sophie nodded to herself. Yep, that's all me right there. Agents, your next mission is of utmost importance and sensitivity. Ryan and Sophie stood at attention, while Luke launched into the critical details of the assignment, abstaining from any superfluous small talk. You'll be infiltrating an extremist group known as Project Purge. Project Purge? Ryan asked. Never heard of them. What's their deal? They're a radical anti-LGBTQ organization, hell-bent on eradicating what they perceive as unnatural and immoral lifestyles. Intelligence suggests they're planning a series of targeted attacks on prominent LGBTQ figures and establishments. We need you two to get inside, gather evidence, and neutralize the threat before they can act. The all-too-familiar burn of prejudice and hatred stirred up haunting memories Sophie had fought relentlessly to lay to rest. Images of her mother's cold, condemning eyes right before her. Ryan, attuned to her wife's every micro-expression, sensed the shift in her demeanor. Without a second thought, she reached out, her fingers finding Sophie's and intertwining in a show of support. This anchored Sophie, pulling her back from the edge of painful recalls. I expect nothing less than your best work on this mission. Luke's eyes moved back and forth between the two agents, his face betraying nothing of his thoughts. The stakes are high, and we cannot afford any missteps. Understood, sir. We'll make sure Project Purge is shut down permanently. Ryan nodded along. Your covers and mission details are being uploaded to the database as we speak. Study them, memorize them, and become them. You'll be heading out at 0600 hours. With a final nod, Luke's image disappeared, leaving the two agents alone in their command center. Over several weeks, Sophie rooted herself within the ranks of Project Purge, posing as a new recruit. She attended their meetings, participated in their activities, and listened to their hateful rhetoric with a growing sense of unease. The group's radical ideology, rooted in a deep-seated hatred for the LGBTQ+ community, was even more disturbing than she had anticipated. Through her undercover work, she discovered the true extent of Project Purge's extremism. They openly advocated for violence against anyone they deemed deviant, and their leadership spoke of a grand plan to cleanse society of what they saw as moral decay. She witnessed firsthand the way they targeted vulnerable individuals, using manipulation and intimidation to recruit new members and silence dissent. Stepping into the shadowy meeting room, Sophie was surrounded by the white-masked members of the cult. Their uniform appearance was an unsettling symbol of the dogmatism and prejudice that fueled the group's extremist agenda. The beat of her heart picked up pace, her senses heightened as she cut a path through the masses, the black fabric of her uniform blending with the dark clothing of those around her. She took her place among the new recruits, her own mask, a screen hiding the disgust on her face. It was a role she had to play, a deception that was necessary to bring this repulsive organization to its knees. The speaker, a tall, imposing figure known only as the Shepherd, with a white, scary mask, took the stage. Brothers and sisters, we gather here today to reaffirm our commitment to the cause, to the eradication of the perverted, the purification of our society. As the Shepherd launched into his tirade against the LGBTQ+ community, he painted a picture of a society under siege, where the irregular and immoral were tearing at the very fiber of decent, upstanding citizens. They seek to corrupt our children, to poison their minds with their twisted, unnatural desires. They spread their filth and depravity like a disease, infecting everything they touch. He went on to describe the LGBTQ+ community as a threat to traditional values, the sanctity of marriage, and the very future of humanity. His words were met with nods and mutters of agreement from the assembled members. We must stand firm against this onslaught, against this attack on our way of life. We must purge our society of this evil and restore it to its former glory. Sophie fought to maintain her cool, her hands clenched into fists beneath her black uniform. She knew that she had to stay focused to gather the intelligence they needed, but beneath it all, she had memories of her own struggles, of the pain and rejection she faced with her mother. "Repeat after me," the shepherd's cold and commanding voice said. "I vow my loyalty to our purpose, to the elimination of the unnatural and the cleansing of our community." Her lips moved, forming the words that tasted like dirt on her tongue. "You're doing great, baby." Ryan's voice came over the QEC, bringing her to the present. "Just a little longer, and we'll have what we need." Sophie drew strength from her wife's words, from the knowledge that she wasn't alone in this fight. "Easy for you to say," Sophie muttered under her breath. "You're not the one surrounded by a bunch of hate-spewing maniacs." "Hey, I've got your back, remember?" Ryan's voice was an easy confidence that Sophie had come to rely on. "Plus, I've got a front row seat to watch you kick some bigoted ass. It's like my own personal Tom Cruise action movie, except the star is a gorgeous, fine-ass queen, and she's all mine. Leave it to Ryan to find a way to make her laugh, even in the middle of all this darkness." And when the meeting finally ended, and Sophie stepped out into the night air, she knew that they were one step closer to their goal. One step closer to bringing this piece of a shit group down and to create a world where love and acceptance could prosper. "You did good, Soph." "I know that couldn't have been easy." Understatement of the century, but it'll all be worth it when we take these bastards down. Sophie pulled off her mask as soon as she got in her unmarked car and adjusted the earpiece so she could hear Ryan better. "Damn straight. Now let's get you home. I think you've earned a hot shower and a strong drink." "Are you gonna be in that shower?" Sophie's voice dripped with innuendo, causing Ryan to laugh over the speaker. "Soph, you can't say that over the QEC." "Wait, you can talk about me being fine, but I can't ask my wife if she's going to be naked and waiting in the shower." "Woman, I'm disconnecting. I'll see you in an hour." Sophie's laughter rang out as Ryan prepared to end the call. Sophie quickly interjected, "Rye." "Yeah?" Sophie wanted to express that four-letter word she'd been itching to spit, but it was stuck on her tongue. She wasn't sure if it was too soon, so she kept it cool. "Thank you for helping me keep my shit together in that meeting." "Of course, I always got you, baby." "Okay, I'll see you soon." Sophie removed her earpiece and placed it in the cup holder. She reached for the ignition, muttering shit under her breath as a knock on the window made her jump. The shepherd hovered outside, his mask still in place. He pulled it off, revealing shaggy hair and a 5 o'clock shadow. "Hey, Sophie, right?" He grinned. "I remember you from initiation night," the shepherd continued. "Ishia," his eyes traveling over her face. "Hard to forget a pretty face like yours, especially when it's not hidden behind a mask." Initiation night. The one time they'd all been barefaced in each other's presence. She'd hoped the dark lighting and the sheer number of new recruits would have made her less memorable. Apparently not. We usually grab drinks at O'Malley's pub down the road after meetings with our brothers and sisters. You should join. Sophie forced a polite smile, even as her stomach churned at the shepherd's insistence. She couldn't risk blowing her cover. "I appreciate the offer, I really do, but I made a promise to my husband. He's expecting me." "Ah, I see. Far be it from me to encourage a woman to disobey her husband, right?" He chuckled as if inviting her to share in some private joke. Right. I know my place. She managed a strained laugh. The shepherd nodded approvingly. That's what I like to hear, a good, obedient wife. You're setting a fine example for the women in our cause. She suppressed the nausea rising and gave a nod, though even that took effort. Well, far be it from me to lead you astray. The shepherd stepped back from the car. You get on home to that lucky husband of yours. I'll see you at the next meeting. Her smile felt like it might crack her face. Have a good night. The shepherd's face stared at Sophie from her computer screen. His video message was creepy and chilling. Brethren, the moment is upon us to launch an attack on the core of the perverse scheme. During the impending protest, we will permanently quiet Dr. Eva Nichols for good. She got chills as the man laid out the plan in rigorous detail, the positioning of snipers, the escape routes, and the calls for soldiers to volunteer for the mission. This was no idle chatter. It was a full-fledged terror plot. Sophie reread the intelligence she had uncovered about the shepherd. She learned his true identity was Felix Lawrence, a former star college quarterback. But after graduation, he had vanished, coinciding with rumors that he'd been caught with another man. Reportedly, his then-boyfriend had confided in a professor, Dr. Nichols. Felix assumed she was the reason everyone found out about their relationship. She reviewed the news clippings on her phone, speculating that Felix had fled town after being outed. What raised even greater suspicion was that the boyfriend, Roger Yale, disappeared too, and his dismembered remains were discovered weeks later in a nearby lake. That explained Felix's reemergence here in Gotham as the Shepherd. He was clearly on an erroneous mission to atone for his past sins and take everyone down. Her mind kicked into overdrive. She needed to alert Black Bat, devise a counter strategy, and ensure Dr. Nichols' safety. A sudden noise from outside the room made her freeze, her hand instinctively flying to the gun at her hip. Footsteps drawing closer. A soft knock at the door. Soph, you in there? It was her wife's voice, soft and gentle, not the cruel tones of the shepherd. She was in her bedroom, a space she hadn't set foot in for ages, not since she started sharing Ryan's bed. She slammed the laptop shut just as the door opened. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind. Come back to bed, babe. Work can wait. She swallowed hard, the horror of what she'd just uncovered still fresh. She knew it was late, but how could she possibly sleep after this? The revelation of the assassination scheme weighed heavily on her. But Ryan's sleepy voice cut through the hyperactive mind. I can't sleep without you. You know that, right? She turned to face the other woman, taking in the adorable drowsiness in her features. The way her face was slightly swollen, probably from her face being smashed into the pillow. Ryan tugged at her hand gently, eyes pleading. With a sigh, she let herself be led back to the other room, casting one last glance at the laptop that held such terrifying secrets. As she slid under the covers and into waiting arms, Sophie tried to quiet her mind. Tomorrow, she would rally the team, and they would figure out how to stop Project Purge. But for now, she was going to soak up every second of being wrapped up in her woman's arms, at least until the sun came up. Even in her sleep, the shepherd's evil grin and the repetition of his hateful words possessed her dreams. At precisely 0600, Sophie immediately contacted Director Fox with Ryan by her side and let him know what she had discovered. This is huge, Director. Dr. Nichols will be in town for a conference, and we need to act now before they can carry out their plan. But Luke's response was not what she had hoped to hear. It's too soon, Agent. We can't risk blowing your cover. With all due respect, sir, I don't think I can stomach any more of their hate. The things they say, the way they talk about people like me and Ryan, it's sickening. Ryan gave Sophie a reassuring touch on the shoulder, but Luke remained unmoved. I understand your concerns, but we need more intel. You have to stay under cover until the day of the rally. Attend the upcoming meetings and gather as much intel as you can. That's an order. Sophie opened her mouth to protest, but Luke had already disconnected the call. She slammed her fist down on the table. This is bullshit, she yelled, pushing away from the surface and standing abruptly. He expects me to just sit there and listen to their disgusting crap, knowing what they're planning? I know it's hard, Soph, but he's right. We need more information if we're going to stop them. She shook her head, not wanting to hear it. She knew Ryan was just trying to help, but right now, Sophie needed space, needed to process the emotions threatening to overwhelm her before the next project purge. Meeting later that day. Without another word, she stormed out of the house, leaving a worried Ryan standing there. Now, 16 hours later, Sophie finds herself back at home in their basement tactical room. She sits at the workbench, carefully disassembling and cleaning one of her sidearms. The rhythmic click and slide of metal on metal did little to soothe her nerves. The meeting today was the worst yet, and she couldn't get the hateful chants out of her head. A particularly malicious chorus surfaced unwelcomely in her recollection. Thou shalt not permit their abomination to continue. Thou shalt not fail in our sacred duty. The cheers that followed. The fervor in their eyes. How could people be so consumed by hate? So eager to spill innocent blood in the name of their twisted beliefs? Her hand slipped, and the spring she was removing clattered to the floor. She cursed under her breath. The unexpected sound broke the silence. The sound of Ryan's footsteps was heard as she walked down the steps. She paused, taking in the sight of Sophie arched over, surrounded by so many weapons. Couldn't sleep? Sophie didn't look up. Her focus remained on the gun before her. Just needed to keep my hands busy. Should I be worried that I have to come find you in some dark corner of the house every night lately? Ryan cocked her head playfully. You couldn't keep your hands busy with me. Sophie remained silent. Undeterred, Ryan crossed the room and settled onto the workbench beside her wife. Up close, she could see the shadows under her eyes, the tightness around her mouth. Gently, Ryan covered her hand with her own and placed the gun that was tight in her hands on the table, stilling her movements. Talk to me, Soph. For a long moment, Sophie didn't respond. Then, with an exhale, the words began to spill forth. Their words cut deep, Rye. It's like they are injecting me with toxic venom, triggering flashbacks of my mother's disapproval, rejecting me for simply embracing who I am. Ryan listened, her thumb tracing soothing circles on the back of Sophie's hand. For a few moments, the weight on her shoulders seemed to lighten as she gave voice to her pain. When I first came out to her, the look on her face, it was like she didn't even recognize me anymore, like I was some stranger wearing her daughter's skin. She told me I was going to hell, that I was a disgrace to the family, that I was choosing a life of sin over the love of God. She let out a humorless, sardonic laugh, as if love could ever be a sin, as if being true to myself was some kind of universal betrayal. She used to tell me that I was confused, that it was just a phase, that if I just prayed hard enough, if I just tried to be normal, God would cure me of my unnatural desires. But then something shifted. The vulnerability left and was replaced by a stony look. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Before Ryan could respond, Sophie was on her feet, pulling away from her. Baby, wait. But the other woman was already moving towards the stairs. And then she was gone, leaving her alone. Again, twice in one day. Ryan stared at the empty space where Sophie had been, trying to process the sudden energy change. She knew her wife's instinct was to compartmentalize, to bury emotions, but that didn't make it any easier to witness. Sighing, Ryan began to gather the scattered gun components. She might not be able to force her partner to confront her demons, but she'd be damned if she let her face this alone. 2 weeks had passed since Sophie uncovered Project Purge's assassination plot. During that time, she dug further into the inner functions of the group, collecting intelligence while keeping her disguise. The prejudiced language and discrimination she saw during the gatherings drained her, but she pushed on, motivated by knowing that people's lives hung in the balance. On the morning of the planned execution, Sophie arrived at the compound early, mentally preparing for the dangerous mission. She made her way to the central meeting room, where the shepherd and his minions were already gathered. Their faces could barely contain excitement. Cracking his knuckles, the shepherd prepared to rally his troops. "All right, today's the day we start fresh by taking out the garbage. No more letting these people drag our community into the gutter. We're taking back what's ours." As the shepherd outlined the final details of the plan, his gaze suddenly locked onto Sophie. "You, sister?" He pointed a finger in her direction. "You're new to our cause. Why don't you come up here and share your thoughts on the mission?" She nearly bit her tongue off, but she arranged her face into a look of devotion. She moved ahead, thoughts flying as she attempted to find the appropriate words. "I'm honored to be a part of this righteous endeavor. For too long, we've allowed the demoralized to contaminate our world. It's time we take a stand and show them the true path to liberation." The shepherd nodded approvingly. "Well said, my sister. Your dedication to our cause is commendable." Just as Sophie was about to respond, a fuss erupted at the back of the room. A group of members burst in, dragging a figure between them. "Shepherd," one of them called out, panicking. "We found this one snooping around the compound. She was trying to plant listening devices." Sophie's world came to a stop as she saw Ryan, her partner and wife, dragged into the room. Bloodied and beaten. She was confused. How had she been caught? She was always so careful in her planning. Something must have gone terribly wrong. A nasty grin spread across the shepherd's face. He walked around Ryan's body, laid out on the concrete. Well. Looks like we've caught ourselves a little dyke. I can smell the perversion from a mile away." He then turned to Sophie with a fiendish pleasure. "And you, sister, you're one of them too, aren't you? A filthy, perverted sinner? Is this your little girlfriend?" How did he figure this out? She remained silent as she tried to formulate a plan. She needed to get Ryan out of here, but they were vastly outnumbered. "You thought you could fool me, didn't you? Thought you could hide behind a mask of righteousness. But I knew from the start you were too weak, too cowardly to truly embrace our cause." He began circling her like a shark. "I must admit, you played your part well, sister," chanting along with the faithful, blending into the crowd. "But I saw the hesitation in your eyes, the lack of true conviction. You reek of doubt, of misguided compassion. Plus, I overheard you talking to a woman the other week, in a way you should be talking to your husband." "But tell me, sister," the shepherd continued with false sympathy, "is that why you came to us? To find forgiveness for your unnatural desires? To pray the gay away?" He leaned in close, his smelly breath, even through the mask, hot against her ear. "Or maybe you thought you could have it both ways. Play the dutiful wife by day with your husband, and indulge your sick fantasies by night." He viewed her as a weak-willed penitent, oblivious to her true role as a mole aiming to destroy Project Purge. With her cover still secure, Sophie took a discreet breath to steady herself before resuming her performance. The shepherd motioned to his followers to form a tight circle around Ryan. "Look at this disgusting creature. She spits in the face of God's divine plan." He delivered a hard kick to her ribs, making her cry out in pain. He turned back to Sophie. "But you, sister, you have a chance to redeem yourself, to prove your commitment to us, He reached behind his back and pulled out a gun, holding it out to her. "Take this weapon and end this abomination's life. Purge the world of her sinful existence and take your place among the faithful." Her hand stopped short, hovering just above the pistol. His fanatics kept their guns trained on her, ready to shoot on command. "Remember, sister," the shepherd warned, "if you try anything foolish, you'll both die here today." While the shepherd issued his warning, Sophie's training and tactical mind instinctively kicked into high gear. She swept the room, quickly taking stock of the situation. 8 extremists around them, all armed. The only exit was the door behind her, currently blocked. 4 members had handguns aimed at her chest. Another 2 held rifles pointed at Ryan. The remaining 2 clutched knives, ready to strike at a moment's notice. She filed away every bit of information, watchful for any opening, any window of opportunity that might allow her and Ryan to make it out of this nightmare alive. The shepherd seemed momentarily taken aback. Sophie coolly met his stare. He had expected to see panic or pleading in her eyes. Instead, her expression was focused and alert. "Takes a queer to no one, huh?" His eyes went wide, and before he could open his mouth, she snatched the gun from the shepherd's hand, but instead of pointing it at Ryan, she whirled around, firing with lightning speed. 2 extremists fell, their weapons clinking to the ground. The room broke out into mayhem as the remaining followers opened fire. But Sophie was already moving. She dove and rolled, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Ryan, seizing the opportunity, rushed to her feet, ignoring the pain in her ribs. She charged at the nearest extremist, disarming him with a brutal twist of his wrist before turning his own gun against him. In perfect unison, the 2 women became a storm of violence. Sophie picked off opponents with her firearm. Even injured, Ryan unleashed a barrage of bone-crushing blows. The shepherd, realizing the tide had turned, tried to make a run for it, but Sophie was faster. She caught him with a flying tackle, sending them both crashing to the ground. They wrestled for the gun, but her strength won out. She pulled the weapon from his grasp and pressed the barrel against his forehead. "It's over. Your views of hatred end here." The shepherd's arrogance disappeared. Staring up at the gun, finally taking hold that his life was on the line. "Please," he whimpered. "Have mercy, and God will cure you of your unnatural desires." Her finger tightened on the trigger. Memories of her mother poured in. The shame and rejection. The desperate need to prove she wasn't some sinner. But Sophie no longer needed her mother's validation. She fastened her hand and fired, free of the past's hold over her. "Soph? Soph? Sophie!" Ryan called out more strongly. Sophie turned to face her injured wife fully. The disturbance in her eyes was all too evident to Ryan. "We need to get out of here. Julia's on the way. Neither of us can drive." Though Ryan referred to her own physical state, she knew Sophie was also in no shape mentally. Sophie nodded, the spell broken. Rushing to her wife's side, she gently examined the bruises that blemished Ryan's skin. Her heart ached to see her hurt. "I'll be okay, soldier. You can fuss over me later. Right now, we gotta move." Sophie remained silent, her eyes still haunted. Ryan reached out, taking her hand in her own. With a tender touch, she removed the gun from her grip and brought her knuckles to her lips, placing a soft kiss there. "It's okay, baby. It's over now." She locked eyes with Ryan, finding something powerful staring back at her. They made their way out of the decimated complex, leaning on each other for support. The shot went dark as the battle-damaged but unstoppable pair disappeared into the darkness. Ryan winced as she lowered herself into the ice-filled tub. "Shit, this is colder than Meg Thee Stallion's tits in a brass bra," she complained, her teeth chattering. Sophie, settled on the edge of the tub, glanced up from her laptop with a smirk. Quit your whining, Wilder. It's for your own good. Easy for you to say. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in the icy water. You're not the one turning into a human popsicle. She gave Sophie a puppy dog look. How much longer do I gotta stay in here? 10 minutes, Sophie replied, while typing up the mission's debrief report for Luke. Now hush, I'm trying to concentrate. Ryan let out an exaggerated sigh, sinking deeper into the tub. She closed her eyes, trying to ignore the numbing sensation spreading through her body. The only sound in the bathroom was the soft clacking of the laptop keys. After what felt like an eternity, Sophie finally closed her laptop and set it on the tile floor. She turned to look at Ryan, whose eyes were closed and face was scrunched up as she survived the icy bathwater. She wasn't about to let a little chill break her. Even in discomfort, she managed to look adorably determined. You know I can feel you watching me, right? Ryan's eyes were still shut. What can I say? I'm a sucker for a pretty face. Ryan cracked one eye open. You're such a creep. You love it, Sophie teased, reaching out to brush a stray hair from Ryan's forehead. Do you know what today is? Wednesday? Sophie's forehead crinkled as she tried to remember. Ryan shook her head, but before she could elaborate, the timer on her phone went off, signaling the end of her icy torture. Oh, thank God, Ryan exclaimed, sitting up suddenly and sending water sloshing over the sides of the tub. I thought my nipples were gonna fall off. Always so dramatic. Come on, let's get you warmed up. Ryan stood, her teeth chattering as she stepped out of the tub and into the waiting warm towel that Sophie wrapped her up in. You did good, babe, she said, softly kissing her forehead. I'm proud of you. Still wrapped in the towel, she pulled Sophie into a tight hug, gently running her fingers through her wife's hair. Soph, I know these past few weeks have been tough on you. You've been so strong, but it's okay to lean on me. I'm here for you, always. And you can talk to me about anything. You know that, right? Melting against her, Sophie let the warmth chase away the cold air of the bathroom. She let out a shaky breath, the burden of the past few weeks finally catching up to her. I know, baby. I'm sorry for being so distant lately. Pulling back slightly, Ryan placed a finger over Sophie's lips. She shook her head. No, you don't apologize. I get it, I do. This was a tough mission for you, and it killed me to see you going through that. But I can only imagine that things are going to get harder from here on out. We just have to remember that we have each other, okay? What you can't do, I will. We're in this together. With her wife's fingers still pressed against her lips, Sophie nodded and kissed the finger softly before burying her face in the crook of Ryan's neck. She inhaled deeply her scent, grounding herself in the moment. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, and Sophie felt the tension slowly leaving her body, replaced by peace and understanding that only Ryan could provide. After a while, Ryan let out a small grimace, her bruised body protesting the prolonged standing. Shit, let's get you to bed. Later, as they lay in bed, snuggled under the covers and flipping through channels on the TV, Sophie's mind wandered back to their earlier conversation. Hey, Rye? She asked, turning to face her. What did you mean earlier when you asked if I knew what today was? Oh, yeah, about that. Ryan flinched as her sore muscles screamed at her. Could you grab my journal from the nightstand on your side? I wrote something for you. Eyebrows raised in surprise, Sophie quickly reached over to retrieve the well-worn leather journal. She handed it over and Ryan flipped through the pages until she found what she was looking for. I wanted to wait until the right moment to share this with you, but there's no time like the present, right? Happy first anniversary, baby. Sophie stopped when first anniversary left Ryan's lips with a surge of guilt, How could she have forgotten such a significant milestone in their relationship? Unable to sit still, she leaped out of bed and began pacing the room. Ryan, amused by her reaction, watched from the bed with a smile. "Soph, calm down. It's okay," she tried to reassure her frantic spouse. "No, it's not okay. I can't believe I forgot our anniversary. What kind of wife does that make me?" Ryan yawned, exhausted and in pain. "Babe, come back to bed and read what I wrote for you. Your overdramatic ass is gonna wear a hole in the floor." Still not entirely satisfied but unable to resist her request, Sophie climbed back into bed. As she settled in, she wrecked her mind trying to come up with ways to make it up to Ryan. "Here, read it out loud, too. Roses are red, violets are blue. When we first met, I didn't have a clue that this arranged marriage would be such a ride, with you, my partner, always by my side. From busting bad guys to saving the day, we've faced it all, come what may. You've seen me at my worst, my fears and my flaws, but you still stick around, and that gives me pause. I know I can be a handful, a real pain in the ass, but you're here for me anyway, and that's a real class. You've taught me to trust, to open up and share. With you, I feel safe, like I'm finally there. So here's to us, babe, in the year that's passed, to the laughs, the tears, and the memories amassed. Here's to another year of kicking ass and taking names. With you by my side, I'm ready for any game. Happy anniversary, wifey, my partner in crime. Let's make this next year one hell of a time." She couldn't hold back the watery chuckle that bubbled up as she finished the last line. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but her heart was overflowing with so much love for her silly wife. "Ryan, this is perfect. I can't believe I forgot the day Luke handed us those rings. I didn't know it then, but it was one of the best days of my life. I'm so sorry, baby." "It's okay, Soph. We've had a lot on our minds lately. I just wanted to remind you how much you mean to me." Another yawn escaped her lips and she mumbled, "I'm sleepy. What the hell was in those pills Julia gave me?" Sophie recalled how their mentor had given Ryan a pill box filled with some black market medicine and instructed her to keep a close eye on the younger woman. She leaned over to the nightstand, intending to read the contents, but before she could even open her mouth, snores from the bed filled the room. Shaking her head, she pulled the comforter over Ryan's sleeping form and turned off the TV. She leaned down, placing a gentle kiss on each of her eyelids. "Good night, beautiful," her heart full for the incredible woman beside her. She settled back into bed and glanced at the journal lying between them. An idea sparked in her mind, and she reached for it, setting the lights to a low dim. With Ryan's soft snores as her backdrop, Sophie began to write, pouring her heart onto the pages, determined to show her wife just how much she meant to her, too. The next morning, though it was still dark out, Ryan woke with a loud, over-the-top yawn. Blinking the sleeping crust from her eyes, she noticed Sophie sitting up in bed, her laptop balanced on her knees as she typed away. "Did you even go to sleep last night?" Her voice still rough. "Nope. I've been working on something." "Do I even want to know?" Ryan rubbed her eyes, trying to clear the fog from her brain. "Can you even see straight?" Sophie placed her laptop on the nightstand and reached over to wave her hand across Ryan's face. Swatting at the hand, Ryan groaned under her breath. The other woman laughed, grabbing the journal from the nightstand and handing it over. Taking the journal, she still appeared confused. "I'm lost. What's going on?" Flipping it open to a new page, revealed Sophie's neat handwriting. "I wrote something for you, too." With a final swipe to clear her eyes, Ryan focused on Sophie's scripted words. "Mrs. Wilder, when I first met you, I had no idea how much you would change my life. You came into my world like lightning, turning everything upside down in the best possible way. Your strength, your resilience, and your soul inspire me every day. I know our lives are far from ordinary, and our relationship has been tested in ways most couples could never imagine. But through it all, you've been my rock, my partner, and my best friend. You make me laugh when I want to cry, and you give me hope when all seems lost. I can't promise that our future will be easy, but I can promise that I will always be by your side, facing every challenge and celebrating every victory with you. You are my home, my heart, and my everything. So on this day and every day, I commit myself to you, to us, and to the incredible journey we're on together. Happy anniversary. Gorgeous. Without a second thought, Ryan threw the journal somewhere on the floor and launched herself at Sophie with tears in her eyes. Ignoring the pain in her body, the kiss was deep and she poured all her love and gratitude into it. Sophie laughed against her lips and eased them both back onto the bed with Ryan on her back. When they finally broke apart, she looked into those warm brown eyes, ready to finally admit her feelings. I love you, Ryan Wilder. I'm so in love with you. And I want to build a life with you, a real future, beyond all this other stuff. Ryan's breath caught in her throat, and her eyes dilated as the words sank in. For a moment, she seemed frozen, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. Soon, a smile spread across her face, full of love, and Sophie was certain she had never witnessed anything more beautiful. My love, my everything. I love you too. I love you with every fiber of my being. You're the piece of me I never knew was missing. The one who makes me feel complete. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, and I'm never letting you go. Sophie pulled Ryan in for another deep, loving kiss. When they parted, she rested her forehead against the other woman's, a smile on her face. So when did you know? Ryan asked, her fingers intertwined with Sophie's. Know what? That you were madly in love with me, of course. Let me think. Somewhere between us arguing on the subway because you killed Ghost and us laying on the rooftops looking at the stars. Or was it earlier than that when you yanked me from a car window? Here you go again. Woman, I was just trying to see if you were still alive. Yeah. You know, I think I might have loved you first. Ryan reflected, tracing patterns on Sophie's arm. Oh, really? And what makes you so sure? Come on, it's obvious. I was smitten from the moment you put me in a headlock during our first sparring session. Only you would find that romantic. Can you blame me? Ryan grinned, planting a kiss on Sophie's nose. But seriously, I knew I was a goner the first time you smiled at me. You really smiled and your dimples popped. All I could think was, wow, and my chest just felt funny, and I was nervous. Funny, I could say the same about you. I think your smile could stop world hunger. Ryan playfully scoffed. But deep down, her heart melted whenever Sophie laid it on thick like that. As they lay there, tangled in each other's arms, Sophie suddenly remembered something. Oh, I almost forgot. I've got something planned for us. I was working on the details earlier, but how does a weekend getaway at the Whiteface Lodge sound? We can stay there a few days before we have to pack up for the next mission. I was just talking about that place. I know. What my wife wants, my wife gets. Well, your wife could use some good loving right about now. You're too injured for that, babe. But I can just lay here and you can do all the work. Ryan pouted. Okay, so now you're pillow princess, Sophie joked, giving her a playful side eye. Aight, you got jokes. Ryan leaned in and gave the other woman's cheek a teasing nibble. Sophie turned and laughed, apologizing between wet smooches she planted all over Ryan's face. Sophie's lips then trailed down Ryan's neck, peppering her skin with feather-like kisses. Her hand drifted southward, carefully navigating the contusions that embellished her wife's body. Ryan opened her mouth to form an O as Sophie's fingers slipped beneath the waistband of her pajama pants, finding the wet heat that awaited her. Soph. Ryan's hips lifted to meet the touch. Shh, baby. Let me take care of you. This is what you want, right? For me to make you feel good and relax. I'm going to put you back to sleep. With a touch that was both tender and heady, Sophie began to circle Ryan's swollen clit. She kept her strokes slow and intentional, building the pleasure slowly until Ryan was squirming beneath her. She then began to rotate, as if she were rolling a pearl back and forth and spinning it between her two fingers. I love you. You're everything to me, Rye. Ryan's response was lost in a breath as Sophie smoothly slid inside her, first with her middle finger, then with her index and ring finger. She could feel Ryan's walls contract around her fingers, but she could tell her wife had much more to give. Her fingers moved in and out slowly at first, testing the waters, but soon found a rhythm. The room filled with the sounds of Ryan's cries and the rustle of sheets, a soundtrack of love and desire. Later, when the morning light came fully through the curtains, Ryan came undone, Sophie's name falling from her lips like a prayer. And much later after that, with whispered affirmations of love still resounding in their hearts, Ryan and Sophie succumbed to the pull of sleep, their bodies entwined and their souls laid bare. In the quiet stillness of the morning, with just the birds chirping, a bittersweet truth loitered unspoken between them. Though they had found reassurance in each other's arms, the path ahead was far from certain. Can their relationship make it through whatever crazy shit life throws at them next?